here.
What's up, everybody? It's your favorite awkward positions, favorite nerd, and today we are looking at the Open Play Big Spring, which is their take on Springer. I like to be transparent about such things. This was sent to me by Open Play, and it puts me in an awkward position because there's some things about this that I really don't care for. The good news is, most of those things are subjective. So we're definitely dealing with my sensibilities and not necessarily yours. That being said, as you can see, he holds his gun just fine. Let's go ahead and jump into other accessories. We'll start with the gun, just pretty much gray plastic. It's kind of like that swirly plastic a little bit, but not too much. Decent sculpt, not anything crazy, and no paint at all. Looks very plain, but it's a gun. You know, I guess how much do you need out of it? He also has this, which is his sword, and then the little sheath or holder for his sword. This is probably one of the best looking things on this figure. This metallic blue paint is beautiful. There's a little bit of wear on the edges there, but overall it's beautiful. The fact that when it sits like this, it has these pistons that go up into it on both sides is smart. He holds it just fine, which we'll take a look at here in a second. This plugs into his back and then secures the sword so it sits with no problem. And to open it up, you just open up those two tabs there, flip them down, and it's a really cool design because now it looks like the pistons are coming up and holding the other piece. I like this an awful lot. And he holds it just like the gun with tension. So you just put it right in there and take it out, holds it just fine. And it plugs into his back here. And then you can have it on either side of him or straight up and down. And he has better things to do tonight than die. He comes with this, which is the wrong color, and it has no paint applied to it. It's a decent sculpt, but it doesn't follow through on what it's supposed to look like one bit because there's no extra love or TLC added to it, which is a huge bummer. Other than that, I guess it's fine. You got to position him in a way where he can hold it, but this is... like, if you're not gonna do something right, don't do it at all. And I feel like the figure would be better off if they just left this out of it totally. That is my opinion. You may like it all gray, but I don't get this. But he can hold it using Sir Isaac Newton's favorite thing in the world, which I believe is gravity. Now, let's talk about the figure. So, the head sculpt is horrendous. There's hardly any definition in it. It looks a bit like a Lego face. I don't care for it one bit. It's really subpar. It's not really good at all. It's quite bad, actually. The helmet is decent enough, but it's a little thin. The yellow on the inside is painted well, and to be fair, so is the yellow here. And throughout, where there is yellow paint. I think that's the only paint that's applied. Nonetheless, it's done really well, and as you well know, if you watch my reviews, I often talk about how yellow is a difficult color to get right, and they did. I don't know if they used double layers or if they have the right type of yellow paint, but the yellow paint on here is done really well. The head sculpt, unfortunately, is not. It's on a ball peg, but it's meant to look like a hinged swivel. You do get a swivel out of it. It kind of puts it off at an angle. It's a little strange, and then you get down to there, up to there. So that all works fine articulation-wise, but sculpt-wise, which some would argue, myself included, is the most important thing, doesn't really carry through. The chest is plain, which is fine, and then we have these things up here with a little bit of sculpted detail in there, but not much, and then we have the yellow paint, which I've already said looks great, down here as well. You do have a waist swivel that works smoothly with no issue, and the nice thing is if you take up the chest and flip this piece in, it allows you to get an ab crunch, which is a nice touch. Recently, shout out to MP Collector, recently the truth is that ab crunches are becoming more common, which is a nice thing to see. I mean, I think that both figures that we look at this week in terms of Transformers have both had them, and then you can plug it in and it stays secure. I should note, though, that if it is not plugged in and you want to use the ab crunch, if he's standing straight up, you do have the gap, which is an acceptable loss for me, but it is awfully floppy, so be aware of that. The good news is if you have it secured as it's meant to be, you don't have a floppy issue at all. All right, let's move on to the shoulders. So you can have the shoulders like this, Or you can rotate this and have them over the back like that. You can manipulate this rather any way you'd like to kind of suit your sensibilities. Let's get it tabbed back in right there. So it's a universal joint. Basically, this does come untabbed. Even when it's secure, it does come untabbed. Just be mindful. It's basically a universal joint. We have a soft ratchet around with no issue there, and then just tension out to the side on a hinge, which is fine. Get you 90 degrees. No issues there. Deco-wise, I think this is all... See, that might be yellow. That's yellow paint. And look how well that yellow paint is done. It's beautiful. Bicep swivel, double jointed elbow that gets you almost the full range. Only thing that gets in your way is this. It's not the elbow's fault. You have a wrist swivel, and the fingers are on a base pin knuckle, but the forefinger is on a different set of articulation. All these are the same, and then the thumb is stationary. Now, if you follow my reviews, you know how I feel about fingers that are permanent in a bent position, where it's almost like he has to be gripping something or in a relaxed pose, because otherwise it looks like he's permanently typing on a keyboard, which is not my favorite thing either. Now, the double jointed elbow is nice. It's just very little gap between the two. The mold and everything kind of keeps its cohesiveness, which is nice. And it came unplugged again, you see? That's an issue. Not the best. All right, let's continue on. This arm's the same, so we'll get those out of the way. We'll talk about the hips. One thing I do like about the hips, instead of having a hip skirt that flips up, it's a separate piece that sits around the universal joint, so as you move the universal, it kind of tucks away where it needs to go. I dig that. I wouldn't mind seeing that used more often as an approach. It's a ratcheted universal, both out to the side and forward, and you can get the full Van Damme and the full Monty for the most part. Let's give it to him. So nothing's going to stand in your way in that regard, so to speak. Thigh swivel is at a cut joint. Oh, I thought it was here. It's not. It's down here. That was me not paying attention. So there's the thigh joint for the thigh swivel. You have a single jointed knee that's ratcheted that gets you 90 degrees, so no issue there. Ankles, you have a tilt up, a tilt down, a separate toe hinge, a separate heel spur hinge. You do have this little bit of rubber here. Is that rubber or plastic? I don't know. It should give you some extra stability either way. You can flip this out if you like a longer toe. That's up to you. Let's go ahead and do that just so you can get a look of how that would be. And you get a significant rocker, so no issues there. However, just as a side note, aside from this silver accent here, not a lick of paint on the entire legs for a Masterpiece figure. Masterpiece scaled. The back of the figure cleans up exceptionally well for a triple changer, so that should be noted. And that's this guy. Size comparison wise, there he is with some other offerings, both official and unofficial, to give you a sense of his size, and I think he scaled pretty well. Now let's go into car mode. As a heads up, this thing doesn't come with instructions. You know I have a hard enough time with instructions, but this one doesn't come with any, so I'm kind of just doing the best I can.
They didn't send him instructions?
I'm hoping that it works out right. So we tuck in the hand, close up the forearm. Make sure that the palms are up when you start. There's a couple other things I like to do, one of which being to open up this and this on both sides of the chest as a bit of a reminder. We can move these shoulder pieces around into the back like I showed you when we went through the articulation. And then these will actually plug in to this, but it'll probably come undone a few times. And we can do that on this side too. There. Now, we need to open this chest piece up here, and we need to bring out this windshield there. And there's just a number of things that kind of have to happen here. So, bring this out, and then you need to rotate this piece around. Now, these shoulders here are on double hinges, and you could use this for articulation as well. I didn't mention them. Bring these around. And you want to do that to both sides. And then straighten this out to the best of your ability, because this needs to plug into the other side. Move the head. We'll tuck the head in for just a second. There. That's the angle you want. So now you'll be able to plug this into the sides. And on underneath, this whole section here rotates, and then there's an additional hinge. I think you just push the back hinge all the way up, turn the head around, and sort of cover down on the head with this piece, but I'm not entirely sure. It doesn't feel super secure, but I can't find a better way to do it. These things are on rails. Slide them up. Make sure they go all the way. And then you want to bring your arms around, and these pegs here will go in to those ports. Let's see. Okay, that came undone. And you see both forearms have come undone as well. All right. So then you're going to bring this piece out. You're going to bring out this middle section. You're going to open this, which is, it gives me some trouble. There. I must just be grabbing onto the wrong piece in order to get it to slide. But you want to open that up, open this up, and tuck this through. And this comes down and plugs in to there. So they figured out how to secure this section, and also how to go from a larger windshield to a smaller windshield for helicopter mode. This piece has already fallen into place, so is the other side. So as a general rule, they sit back like this in robot mode, just spin them down and then push them in. And that's the top half. All right. So fold the toes in and collapse the feet. And wait, before you go any further, untab these here on the side. They're not tabbed in, just pull them out, so to speak. And push this thruster out, or you'll be hating life later. All right. Now, this is where you earn your money. So, you want to separate this. I've already done it. Separate this. And rotate this on the kneecap on both sides. And these pieces will tab together. Now, you want to rotate this to the side, I believe. And I think that's all you need to do. I could be wrong. It's hard to stay oriented because there's a bunch of moving pieces here. And then that piece that I initially was confused with, the thigh swivel, you can break. And now you tuck in the hips into here. These two pieces sit along here, and then we'll orient the wheels. And if you did it right, these gray pieces will sit inside of that cavity. And then you need to probably, if you're anything like me, reposition all of this. What is going on here?
He's ate up.
All right. Spin these. I gotcha. Like that. It should make sense when you have it in hand because it has to fit a certain kind of way. And we'll twist this so that these two pieces plug together. And then all of this has to collapse and keep its shape.
He doesn't see the piece has to flip around and then, oh my.
Oh, you know why? Because these feet fold into here. That's what it is. My apologies. And then that should make my life a lot easier, as it did.
Worth every second.
And we'll get it cleaned up. Your side pieces plug in. and etc. But that's basically it. I'll get it cleaned up. We'll take a look at it. So there it is, and it's a little stumpy. Like, it feels like it's a little too compact, like almost like it's like a kid's version of Springer in car mode. There it is, size comparison wise with Tiger Track, so it's a good enough size. And the paint on the silver comes through a little bit more there, and then we got the yellow that still looks good, and it's kind of fine, and it rolls. And the tires, are they plastic? I think they, I don't know. It might be they might be rubber. I can't tell. You know, I have callus all over my fingers. It's hard for me to tell. All right, so let's go here. You can plug that in there. You can plug this in there on this hexagon. Is that a hexagon? Actually, a funny story. I almost failed geometry in high school. There, so that, like that. I had a teacher named Mr. Hutchinson, and you can put the sword there, and of course we have other options with that later. And anyway, he was going to fail me. I had a 58.7 or something like that. I was failing, and he asked me what I wanted to do when I grew up, and I told him that I wanted to be an architect, and he looked at me with a crazy face, and then I said, "I'm kidding, man, I want to be a rock star," and he laughed and passed me. My dad didn't understand. My dad's older than me. I don't know why I'm telling this story. I should be talking about the figure, but my dad, he was born in 1940 or something, so like he wasn't in high school for some time when I was in high school. And when I told him I was failing geometry, he said, "Isn't that the one with shapes, Bob?" Like, he was disgusted. Anyway, this is car mode. It's fine, I guess. Looks a little stumpy, but it does work. Let's get him into helicopter mode. Now, luckily, there's not that much to this one, so we're going to untab the arms here. Rotate them down, and on the bottom side we want to use that sliding mechanism and slide them down. At this point we should be able to untab this and rotate it around and then tab them back in like it was for robot mode. Come on, girl. Alright. Now, we'll bring this around, and you want to bring these down. Let's see, you want to flip these over. They're on a double hinge here. And that should tab into the other side, but it is kicking my backside right now. Let's see. There. Same for this side. Let's see if this one does it any easier. Not really. There. All right. Now you want to take these around, and they come out to there, and then you can open up this forearm piece and bring out the faux wing. And this will then tab together, and this whole section rotates back into that position. Actually, we should bring this up now and do this too. Utilizing our windshield mechanism, we're going to rotate this and tuck it in, so to speak, and then put this back down. Why isn't that working right? Maybe it has to go like that. There. All right. Same thing on this side. Bring the arm around, tab port, and open this side up. Flip that around, tab back in, and then using the shoulder, the additional shoulder hinge, we're going to place this down in there. And that's the front end, which is the most difficult. The back end is fairly easy. You just extend this and extend this. And then it's a very technical thing you have to do, which I call smooshing. You just sort of smoosh it all together and tab it into place. Make sure that everything stays the way it's supposed to be. And that's basically it. I'll get it cleaned up. We'll take a look at it. Of course, the propeller goes in the top. And there it is. I'm not sure if, like this keeps coming out. I'm not sure. There's tabs here and ports. It looks like it should tab in the front. Like I said, I don't have instructions, but it seems like in order to line up with this gray bar here, it can't tab in the front, but I'm not sure. Propeller does spin, which is nice. The wheels do sort out, and these wings are cool. It still looks a little stumpy to me in the front. There it is with Tiger tracks. And I'm not sure if there's anything else to say. The wheels do operate as landing gear, basically, so it still can roll. I'm having a hard time getting these to stay in position. But, yeah, I think it's fine. I guess there's an animation quality to it, like, you know, and the fact that it looks a little childish. But, you know, my main issue with this thing across the board is the way it looks. It's not really anything else. There is some frustrating elements back here, but for the most part, it's really fine. So let me get it transformed into robot mode and we'll do some final thoughts. Final thoughts wise, we're going to have to break this down into subjective and objective. Objectively speaking, it needs more paint. There's a lot of plain plastic here and it doesn't really come forward in the sense of presence. It kind of fades into the background and it ends up looking cheaper than what it actually feels like. Objectively speaking, the sculpt is not great. It's okay. There are some parts that are worse than others. But even aside from the face, the sculpt isn't great. It's fine, it's presentable, but it's not stellar. It's certainly not masterpiece. The alt modes are a little stumpy. One thing I did, these are headlights. These actually do come up. You can use them in both modes if you want. I forgot to mention those. They're a little stumpy, but you know, you can make the argument that they should be stumpy, so I get that. Subjectively, I don't like the way this thing looks in any mode. That's just me personally. Subjectively, I think that every other option looks being the key word, more promising. And that's just in terms of the way it looks. We're gonna get into some positives here in a second that might have a bigger impact other than looks. But just speaking about looks, I have to admit, I don't like the way this thing looks at any point throughout its transformation. Now the positives, objectively speaking. The articulation is great. Everything works across the board, no issues. You get all the range of motion that you could possibly want. The action figure element does come through, and there's nothing to complain about. Materials, they feel fine. They don't feel great, but they don't feel bad in any way, shape, or form. They feel, it feels a little, I don't know, it feels a little softer than I prefer, but it's not bad. It cleans up like a champ, and a lot of the elements of the transformation are unique. Now, let's talk about subjective for the positives. I like the transformation process. I like it personally. That's not to say there aren't elements of it that I find frustrating. As you could tell, there certainly are. Now, those might be easier had I had instructions, but I can't comment on that. But what I can comment on is that a lot of times going through all three modes, each mode to get through is a pain in the balls. I have to admit here that the pain in the balls aspect comes along with trying to get it into one of the alt modes initially. Getting it into the second alt mode is pretty easy from that point forward, and then getting it back to robot mode is no big deal as well. So I find the transformation fairly enjoyable and easier to get to all three modes. So, money question, do I recommend it? Unfortunately, I can't. And I can't just because I don't think it looks great. But that's totally my opinion. It's my opinion that's preventing me from recommending it. I've only looked at one other Springer, and that's Alan. I think Alan looks better. And I have issues with the way that Alan looks. And then the MMC one is coming, and the Fanstoys one are coming. Fanstoys! But I just don't know how those are going to play out in terms of engineering. I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure that Fanstoys specifically will be able to beat the engineering of this. but I'm pretty sure they're going to beat the look, and MMC might beat both. And that's the main issue that you come into with buying a figure like this, is that the competitors that are coming are heavy hitters, and they look to have nailed at least the aesthetics, which end up making up 90% of the enjoyment I get from a figure better than this. So unfortunately, that's where I'm at. And it puts me in an awkward spot, because I was sent this, you know, and it's hard to be critical of something when you're sent it on the arm. You recognize that someone was doing you a solid by sending it to you, and you don't want to be ungrateful, but you have to be honest. And honestly, I can't recommend it. The reason why I made a point to differentiate the subjective and objective nature of this review is because in the past, if I've been critical of a figure that I've gotten on the arm, one of the criticisms, which I welcome, constructive criticisms, has been that I dwell too much on the subjective and not enough on the objective. And I might be guilty of that. You could make the argument that I don't receive those criticisms when I'm praising a figure, and I would say they might be guilty of that. So for this review, I definitely wanted to point out both the objective and subjective nature of my criticism and praises for this figure before I got out of here. Hope it helps in some regard. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.